All right, Max. Today we are reviewing on the Happy Train again before going back to some darker ones. My Beijing. Four Stories of Everyday Wonder. This is by Ni Jun. Apologies if I'm pronouncing any of that wrong. And what's the story about here? You kind of get already where you're going to be from the title very nicely, right? The entire story is in Beijing. So this is a story about China. And the main characters are Ewer and her grandpa. That's basically the entire central. That's the center piece of the story that everything revolves around. You get four very cool different stories, all a mix of like whimsical fun, but some nice emotional moments and some cool other little quirks we'll talk about more, I'm sure. But that's essentially the center of this book. Is they're not dealing with revolutions, they're not dealing with wars, immigration, big heady topics. They really are just getting like a fictional slice of life with a little bit of magic and whimsy blended in. This feels like one of the few more like children's book forward things I've reviewed here. And also kind of it's also kind of cool because you get that sense of like just how small they are. While the stories can feel big, they're Beijing is like something like when I believe I'm going off memory here, but just Beijing is like 20 million plus people. So their entire world is this couple blocks that is like they're part of Beijing, and you get that sense of like feeling a little bit the small person in a huge city. So anyway, I'll dive into the specifics, but first the patent pended scoring system. I need to find a not pencil because this looks harder to read. But first off, characters. So again, it's Ewer and her grandpa. They are quite endearing. I would say that's the best way to describe them. They both have some. They're both kind, but also resilient and firm. The love of the grandpa to Ewer is like super duper apparent. Like what the very first story is Ewer who's got some physical handicaps, wants to swim in the Special Olympics. They don't have a pool, so the grandpa basically builds this sort of hanging pulley system thing for her to practice, which is just like an absolutely adorable idea. You get to see elements of you are dealing with her grandpa. It turns out at different phases of his life. I'm not going to try to spoil too much of the little magical stories, but time is a cool element here. You get to each story is sort of cyclic in a cool way. But anyway, I'm biased again. When I get overwhelmed with characters and I can't really remember many details about any of them specifically after reading the book, I feel like that's a lower score. And it's a higher score, I think, when they choose to focus on a small subset of characters. But because of that, they end up being deeper and more memorable. And I think very strong overall for the character score here, just focusing on those two in this story. Art-wise, I gave this a 5. I've said this a zillion times. I'm a big fan of color. This book is laid over with color, and I think that I don't know enough about color to say like this is a. I think I would describe it as very pastel-y, if that's even the right word. There's a lot of like softer hues, pinks and purples and such. I think that really makes it stick out. I think if this was black and white, I would not love it. I think that I can't quite put my finger on it though. So I would say that like I find the art style enjoyable and kind of friendly in a kid-like way. Like everything's sort of like rounded or more bulbous than it would be in real life. Like there's almost nothing sharp in this whole book. And I can see where there's an appeal to this. I think probably not my favorite overall artistic style, but I do like, again, the use of color. I think it makes some of the scenery and the housing pop in particular. Like I like scenes like this a lot. You get to see like the town and some of the shapes of the buildings and such, and backdropped against trees with leaves that kind of pop. it just forms a nice impression, but there's no single series of pages here for the art that I could really say like, oh, I would like have to reread this book because it was so good and I have to come back to it for that. So like a solid art score. I would say, again, not my absolute favorite way of drawing things, and I don't think they do too many super creative things with the art in particular, but yeah, like not like a weak spot either. I would say pretty average. History culture. So yeah, again, even from the title page, I would say this is a good summary of the type of culture stuff you get. You get a lot of showing without saying about, I think, Chinese culture and such. This book really does focus on the people first, but even though that is the case, you still get like a lot of, again, what it would have looked like at various time periods in Beijing, like what maybe the stamps look like, what the post office boxes look like, what the buildings look like, what the food looks like. So I think that there's a good balance, I suppose, of like a lot of the everyday materials and just life of being in Beijing, which I thought this got across. But did it tackle much in terms of something uniquely Chinese or uniquely Beijing that they like, something like historical or cultural? They don't really do any of that. It really is like a more fantasy type story. And so I think for the look, the feel, the food, all these kinds of things, that you get some random words in Mandarin and whatnot, or Cantonese, sprinkled throughout it. So like it's not like a 1 by any means. You don't get, I would be surprised again if I'm reviewing any of these books and this score in particular ever gets to a 1, because it's almost like if it's a 1, why am I reviewing it? It's not even about sort of a a place around the world to feel like you're kind of going there. But yeah, not super memorable. There's not like anything history-wise or culture-wise that I think this book is about. It's much more about the everyday. Readability, very readable, 6 out of 10, I think. That's about right. This book is only about 120 pages. I think, again, due to the art style, due to the strong focus on the characters, due to the not overly wordy nature of it, you could blow through this in a single sitting. I think that I didn't because, again, as much as I like the characters and I think the art serves the kind of medium well enough, I do think some of the reason that, the best of these that I've reviewed, like, again, I'm thinking like a Shubik Lubik, or even maybe the most direct comparison is like the Iranian Love Stories, because Iranian Love Stories was a book where it was really cut into a bunch of separate stories. And so to keep going one to the other, it's almost like you had to trust and feel swept up in just the very central, interesting theme that brought them all together. I think this is a good book. It's a fun book, but again, since it wasn't really tackling a lot of like real world stuff, and these are like fictional characters, maybe there just wasn't the same level of investment or intrigue or mystery, what's going to happen next. So, definitely easy to read through, but slightly hurts the readability, just that like there's also not as much the propelling factor. Like I think I would read through like one of these stories and be like, okay, cool, I'll come back to it later, even if it only took like 15 minutes to read one of these stories. So on the plus side, I think I did read 1 or 2 of these with like my 4-year-old, and it was like, relatively speaking, age appropriate enough. There are some times where it's a little bit of bullying or a little bit, so there's like, you have to be sensitive, but like this is the type of book you could read with kids at a certain age, and I think they could really enjoy it. The last part here for the X Factor, like a solid 5, because this book does do some fun stuff. I already alluded to it, but without like spoiling it, every single chapter or story in this book, there's kind of like a magical element to it, and there's a cool temporal recursiveness to it as well. Like you often sort of start where you end or end where you start, sort of a thing. I think this is like not a totally novel concept. Like there's many video games or novels where like time travel is like a central part of the story. But I felt like it almost sneaked up on a very cute way of introducing these in ways that, even though it did a version of it already, I wasn't exactly expecting it in the next story. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and even the side characters, I thought they were interesting. The art style, while not my favorite, I think this is a very distinct looking art style. So I think all of that kind of led to at least an average or above average X Factor score. Takes us to an overall 5.4. very very respectful. So My Beijing, 4 stories of everyday wonder. The title is very descriptive. You get some slice of life stories about Beijing. I think that especially if you maybe had kids and they were in the right age range, this could be like a really fun kind of introduction to graphic novels that dive into different cultures. No death, no killing, no curse words, things like that. Explicit scenes. It's, again, some minor bullying, some like tension because of some of the characters and what they're going through. But yeah, solid overall, and I think a very happy book. If you read this, I think I'm sure you would have a slightly better day because there's some very nice moments in it. So leave it at that.